Hi everyone, and thanks for joining. Today I'm going to walk you through two rooms from this advanced Splunk module, where you can learn about advanced Splunk capabilities to search data for anomalies by creating complex search queries, applying regex, and creating presentable reports and dashboards. So the two rooms for today will be setting up a SOC lab, and the second, dashboards and reports. So let's switch to the first room for today. Everything will be timestamped, so feel free to navigate through the timestamps as you please. First lab for today, explore Splunk beyond basics. I'll read through each of the tasks, then proceed to do the task hands-on. Task number 1, Introduction. We need your help. A few weeks ago, Yasmin, the owner of Coffee, had reported a potential data breach resulting in her secret recipe getting stolen by James from the IT department. Before the recipe could get into the hands of the competitors, he was apprehended after finding undeniable evidence in his laptop, thanks to our forensics team's quick investigation. Now, Yasmin wants to develop an in-house SOC capability for continuously monitoring the critical logs and events to keep an eye on all the activities within the network. She has contacted our team to provide an on-prem resource who can set up a SIEM locally and ingest necessary logs from the different log sources. Our choice of SIEM is Splunk for this activity. You are tasked with installing and configuring Splunk and integrating the log sources on Linux and Windows OS. Prerequisite: the room expects the users to have completed the following rooms: Intro to SIEM and Splunk Basics. About the lab. In this room, you will be handed over two VMs, Linux and Windows, and your task will be to install Splunk on both machines and integrate important log sources on each server, either through listening ports or by installing forwarders. Learning objectives. This room covers the following learning objectives. Dive deep into the Splunk installation process, how to install and configure Splunk in Linux and Windows environments, how to integrate different log sources into Splunk. Answer the questions below, no questions here. Let's proceed to task number 2, Splunk setting up a lab. As explained in the Splunk Basics room, Splunk is a SIEM solution that allows us to collect, analyze, and correlate logs in a centralized server in real time. This room will cover installing Splunk on Linux, Windows, and configuring different log sources from both OS into Splunk. Each lab covers the following topics: Linux lab, install Splunk on Ubuntu server, install and integrate universal forwarder, collecting logs from important log sources, files like syslog, outlog, audit, etc. Windows lab, install Splunk on Windows machine, install and integrate the universal forwarder, integrating and monitoring Coffee THM's web logs, and integrating Windows event logs. No questions in this task. Let's proceed to task number 3, Splunk deployment on Linux server. So let's start the machine now and proceed reading. Splunk supports all major OS versions, has very straightforward steps to install, and can be up and running in less than 10 minutes on any platform. In this task, we will only focus on installing Splunk Enterprise on the Linux host. Typically, we would create an account on splunk.com and go to this Splunk Enterprise download link to select the installation package for the latest version. As of the time of writing, 9.03 is the newest version available on its website. Note: users are not expected to create an account and download the Splunk Enterprise during this activity. All required executables are already downloaded in relevant paths. Connect with the lab. This task will explore installing and configuring Splunk on a Linux machine. Connect with the lab by pressing the Start Machine button at the top of this task, and it will start in split screen view on the right side of the screen. In case the VM is not visible, use the blue Show Split View button at the top right of the page. It will take around 3 to 5 minutes to load fully. For the sake of simplicity, the Splunk installer is already downloaded at the location User's Home, Downloads, Splunk. So we'll then type ls. Note, make sure to run sudo su to change to the root user before applying commands. So we'll run sudo su, then proceed to Splunk installation. Splunk installation is as simple as running a command. You will need to uncompress Splunk by running the following command: tar xvzf, also known as extract z files verbose, then Splunk installer.tgz. After the installation is complete, a new folder named Splunk will be created, as shown below. Let's now move this folder to the op directory and start working on Splunk from there. We'll type ls, confirm, there's Splunk, and let's move this folder to opt directory. Starting Splunk, the above step unzips the Splunk installer and installs all the necessary binaries and files on the system. Once installed, go to the directory opt splunk bin and run the following command to start Splunk. /splunk start -- accept -license. As it is the first time we are starting the Splunk instance, it will ask the user for admin credentials. Create a user account and proceed. So we'll cd into opt splunk bin, then start Splunk, accept license, and create administrator account. Provide the username and create password. And we expect to see the Splunk web interface at HTTP Coffee 8000 port. Accessing Splunk. Congrats, we successfully installed Splunk on our Linux machine, which took us less than 10 minutes. To access Splunk, open the browser within the VM and go to the address http Coffee 8000. If you're connected to the VPN, you can access Splunk right in your browser by going to the address http 10.10.144.155 and port 8000. Use the credentials you created during the installation to access the Splunk dashboard. Explore the different Splunk apps on the left panel. We will explore them further in the coming tasks. Now the question here is, what is the default port for Splunk? So we could conclude this from the instruction above. Let's proceed to do this task hands-on. So let's show split view. And let's view in full screen. So let's check out our downloads directory, then Splunk. Okay, then the instructions, sudo su Then to extract, let's copy paste the command and use the clipboard. Let's see if it's recognized with tab. Yeah, so to complete it now, let's extract the contents and move the Splunk, newly created Splunk directory to opt. Let's prepare the command. Let's verify now contents of this directory. Great, there's Splunk now as expected, and let's move it to opt. Okay, now let's cd to opt Splunk bin and then start Splunk. Let's see what we have there. Okay, we have Splunk. And then let's run this command. Let's provide it with an administrator username. For example, Splunk admin. And let's create the password. Looks good at the moment. Waiting for web server at HTTP 127.0.0.1.8.000 to be available, and it should be available now. Also at HTTP Coffee port 8000. Let's try that out. And let's enter our newly created username and password. And that's all for this task. Let's proceed to task 4, interacting with CLI. Now that we have installed Splunk, it's important to learn some key commands while interacting with Splunk instances through CLI. These commands are run from the opt Splunk directory. It is important to note that we can use the same commands on different platforms. Some important and commonly used commands are shown below. Command Splunk start. The Splunk start command is used to start the Splunk server. This command starts all the necessary Splunk processes and enables the server to accept incoming data. If the server is already running, this command will have no effect. So from opt Splunk, using our root account, using the root account, /bin/Splunk, then start. As mentioned in the output, the Splunk dashboard will be accessible within the VM at http coffee 8000. Command Splunk stop. The Splunk stop command is used to stop the Splunk server. This command stops all the running Splunk processes and disables the server from accepting incoming data. If the server is not running, this command will have no effect. So from opt Splunk, using our root account, type ./bin/Splunk, then stop. Then command Splunk restart. The Splunk restart command is used to restart the Splunk server. This command stops all the running Splunk processes and then starts them again. This is useful when changes have been made to the Splunk configuration files or when the server needs to be restarted for any other reason. Also from opt Splunk with our root account, type ./bin/Splunk, then restart. Then we have command Splunk status. The Splunk status command is used to check the status of the Splunk server. This command will display information about the current state of the server, including whether it is running or not, and any errors that may be occurring. Then command Splunk add one shot. The Splunk add one shot command is used to add a single event to the Splunk index. This is useful for testing purposes or for adding individual events that may not be part of a larger data stream. Then command Splunk search. The Splunk search command is used to search for data in the Splunk index. This command can be used to search for specific events as well as to perform more complex searches using the Splunk's search language. For example, Splunk search coffee. Command Splunk help. The most important command is the help command, which provides all the help options. These are just a few of the many CLI commands available in Splunk. Administrators can use the CLI to manage and configure their Splunk servers more efficiently and effectively. The questions in these tasks are: in Splunk, what is the command to search for the term coffee in the logs? So we saw that above. Let's see the hint. Okay. And the second ask, so to say, is to use the help command to explore different help options and their syntax. So let's run help. And let's verify the current status of our Splunk instance. So running from opt Splunk directory. Let's go one directory up. And from here, from the bin. It's after all from the bin directory, so we can copy paste exactly like this. Okay, Splunk D is running. And let's run help command. So from here, no, from bin. From bin. Okay. Let's see the cheat sheet, for example. And that's all for this task. Let's proceed to task 5, data ingestion. Configuring data ingestion is an important part of Splunk. This allows for the data to be indexed and searchable for the analysts. Splunk accepts data from various log sources like operating system logs, web applications, intrusion detection logs, OS query logs, etc. In this task, we will use Splunk Forwarder to ingest the Linux logs into our Splunk instance. Splunk forwarders. Splunk has two primary types of forwarders that can be used in different use cases. They are explained below. Heavy forwarders. Heavy forwarders are used when we need to apply a filter, analyze or make changes to the logs at the source before forwarding it to the destination. In this task, we will be installing and configuring universal forwarders. Universal forwarders. It is a lightweight agent that gets installed on the target host, and its main purpose is to get the logs and send them to the Splunk instance or another forwarder without applying any filters or indexing. It has to be downloaded separately and has to be enabled before use. In our case, we will use a universal forwarder to ingest logs. Universal forwarders can be downloaded from the official Splunk website. It supports various OS as shown below. Note, as of writing this, 9.03 is the latest version available on the Splunk site. For this task, the 64-bit version of Linux Forwarder is already downloaded in the user's home directory downloads Splunk. So we'll type ls, confirm to see the installers, then install forwarder. Change the user to sudo, unpack, and install the forwarder with the following command: sudo su, then tar xvzf splunk forwarder.tgz. The above command will install all required files in the folder Splunk Forwarder. Next, we will move this folder to opt path with the command move Splunk Forwarder to opt. We will run the Splunk Forwarder instance now and provide it with the new credentials as shown below. So moving Splunk Forwarder to opt, cd into opt Splunk Forwarder, then run bin Splunk start, accept license, provide it with a new set of credentials. Then we'll see there's some checking prerequisites involved. Checking management port 8089 not available. Then new port is suggested, accepted, and then Splunk server daemon is started. By default, Splunk Forwarder runs on port 8089. If the system finds the port unavailable, it will ask the user for the custom port. In this example, we are using 8090 for the forwarder. Splunk Forwarder is up and running, but does not know what data to send and where. This is what we are going to configure next. Let's answer the question below. What is the default port on which Splunk Forwarder runs on? So by default, it's 8089. And let's proceed to do this task hands-on. So in user's home directory, download Splunk. Let's change our user to the starting one, Ubuntu, and let's switch to its home directory, and then let's use the clipboard. And let's switch to our root. And then let's switch to our root user. And then let's extract the Splunk forwarder zip. Then move newly created Splunk forwarder directory to opt. Let's call this new administrator Splunk forwarder admin. Yes, as seen in the instruction, here also port 8089 for management is not available. And let's accept this suggestion to change ports and enter 8090 as the new management port. Looks good at the moment, so let's proceed to task 6, configuring forwarder on Linux. Now that we have installed the forwarder, it needs to know where to send the data. So we will configure it on the host end to send the data and configure Splunk so that it knows from where it is receiving the data. Splunk configuration. Log into Splunk and go to Settings, Forwarding and Receiving tab as shown below. It will show multiple options to configure both forwarding and receiving. As we want to receive data from the Linux endpoint, we will click on Configure Receiving and then proceed by configuring a new receiving port. By default, the Splunk instance receives data from the forwarder on the port 9997. It's up to us to use this port or change it. For now, we will configure our Splunk to start listening on port 9997 and save as shown below. Our listening port 9997 is now enabled and waiting for the data. If we want, we can delete this entry by clicking on the Delete option under the Actions column. Creating index. Now that we have enabled a listening port, the important next step is to create an index that will store all the receiving data. If we do not specify an index, it will start storing received data in the default index, which is called the main index. The Indexes tab contains all the indexes created by the user or by default. This shows some important metadata about the indexes like size, event count, home path, status, etc. Click the New Index button, fill out the form, and click Save to create the index. Here we have created an index called Linux host as shown below. Configuring forwarder. It's time to configure the forwarder to ensure it sends the data to the right destination. Back in the Linux host terminal, go to the opt Splunk forwarder bin directory. And let's run this command, Splunk add forward server 10.10.144.155.99.97 from opt Splunk forwarder bin directory. Expect to see added forwarding. This command will add the forwarder server, which listens to port 9997. Linux log sources. Linux stores all its important logs into the var log file as shown below. In our case, we will ingest syslog into Splunk. All other logs can be ingested using the same method. Next, we will tell Splunk forwarder which log files to monitor. Here we tell Splunk forwarder to monitor the var log syslog file. So from opt Splunk forwarder bin, let's run Splunk add monitor var log syslog with index Linux host. And we expect to see added monitor. Exploring inputs.conf. We can also open the inputs.conf file located in opt Splunk forwarder etc apps search local and look at the configuration added after the commands we used above. So from opt Splunk forwarder etc apps search local, we'll type ls and see what we have there. Expect to see inputs.conf. We can view the content of the inputs.conf using the cat command. We'll proceed to do just that and visually inspect the output. Then, utilizing logger utility. Logger is a built-in command line tool to create test logs added to the syslog file. As we are already monitoring the syslog file and sending all logs to the Splunk, the log we generate in the next step can be found with Splunk logs. Let's run the following command. Logger coffee has the best coffee in town. And let's tail one line from var log syslog to confirm it's logged. Great, we have successfully installed and configured Splunk Forwarder to get the logs from the syslog file into Splunk. And we'll verify this log coffee has the best coffee in town is also present in the GUI. Let's see if we can answer some of these questions without going through the hands-on part first. Follow the same steps and ingest var log out log file into Splunk index Linux logs. What is the value in the source type field? Okay, we'll answer this question after the hands-on part. Then create a new user named analyst using the command add user analyst. Once created, look at the events generated in Splunk related to the user creation activity. How many events are returned as a result of user creation? And the last question, what is the path of the group the user is added after creation? Okay, we'll find the answer to that question also after the hands-on part. So let's do this part hands-on. Let's configure forwarding and receiving. So in the GUI settings, what data forwarding and receiving. Then let's configure receiving. And let's configure new receiving port 9997. That's currently enabled. And let's create one index. And let's give it a name Linux host. Then let's configure forwarder. So let's go to opt Splunk forwarder bin using root account. We're currently root opt Splunk forwarder, then bin, and then let's run this command. And let's add our Splunk forwarder admin username password. Okay, forwarding is added. Then let's monitor varlog syslog file using this command. Splunk add monitor varlog syslog, then add it to index Linux host. Added monitor, okay. And let's explore inputs.conf. So over there, we expect when we get it out, we expect to see just now added varlog syslog, then disabled false, and index as defined Linux host. So let's switch to this directory. So over here we have inputs.conf. Let's get it out. So one spoiler here, looking at Splunk's documentation for inputs.conf. In inputs.conf, additional parameters can be configured, for example, for source type. Though we don't have it here configured with the command we just ran. And let's run logger coffee has the best coffee in town. This command we can run from any directory, so let's run it. Here it's shown it's ran from opt splunk forwarder bin, and we'll run it from here where we are at the moment. So let's try first with that. And let's see that. It's logged as expected, and let's give it a minute. We expect it to see in the Splunk user interface. Then we'll follow these steps again to ingest varlog auslog file and to answer what's the value in the source type field. So here the screenshot, for example, shows currently available one source, varlog syslog, and one source type, which is syslog in this case. And we'll add another source and answer what's its source type. Let's switch to the user interface. Let's search for our index Linux host. let's pick all time and let's keep it at smart mode. So let's see if we can see Coffee. There it is. Coffee has the best coffee in town. And as a screenshot from the instruction was showing one source type, we have that, we see that also here. So now let's add auth log. So let's adjust this command a bit. So we'll run this command from opt Splunk forwarder bin. Let's switch there. And let's prepare our command. Monitor is added, and let's verify that by getting inputs conf. Great, that looks as expected. So let's kickstart the logging from outlog by switching users. Let's say here we are Ubuntu user, and let's switch to sudo, and let's switch back to our Ubuntu user. And let's refresh the user interface here. And remove this part of the search Coffee. So now we have two sources reported and two source types. So we here at the moment see a source type reported out too small. So let's try to use that as the answer for the question. So when we try directly with that, we see the number of characters is not a match. So what could be the issue here? When we take a look at available sources, for var log auth log, we see that there are currently less than 100 logs. Let's filter for this specific source. And let's search for where this auth too small string is coming from. Let's grep for this string recursively in opt Splunk forwarder directory and its subdirectories. And let's also show two lines below this term. So here we see props conf files among results, and this props conf file is related to another Splunk room that goes into props conf configuration file in more detail. In this room there was mentioned inputs.conf, and we saw how it looks in our case. And by going deeper into Splunk's docs for inputs.conf, we see that it is possible to define or customize source type for the specific source. But in our room, we did not do that. Next, when reading Splunk's docs for props.conf configuration file, we see there is mentioned this too small suffix and prefix source type parameter relevant when number of associated logs is less than 100. So in our case, we saw that there is this prefix source type parameter set to true in two props conf files. Props conf file can be sourced from several directories, and there is order of priority to these props conf configuration files. Also, we could customize settings and we could create props conf file. In the highest priority directory, if there are no props conf files already there, under opt Splunk forwarder etc system local, and then restart Splunk forwarding or Splunk. For this room, I will force more aus log logging by switching from a regular Ubuntu user to root user and vice versa. And when the number of logs goes over 100, let's say 200 or 300, let's give it some time, and only restart Splunk forwarding to see if it will pick up change without any additional changes to props, existing props conf, or adding props conf file, or restoring Splunk instance itself. So let's proceed to do that. I will do this a couple of more times to kickstart auslog logging, check number of logs after that, and if it's over 100, then restart forwarding, repeat this process once again, and refresh the view in the Splunk user interface. So after a while, we collected over 100 logs, and we still see source type too small. Let's restart Splunk forwarding, then switch our user once again, and and refresh Splunk GUI. So to restart Splunk forwarding, we'll go to opt Splunk forwarder, then bin, and from there run Splunk restart. Okay, let's switch our user once again. And let's refresh our view. There it is. So now we see in the left side panel for one source, var log out log, we see two source types. Now it switched from out to small to syslog. And we'll try with syslog as the answer to task's question. Also, by going deeper into syslog with systemctl status syslog, we see here service is active, relevant docs is for rsyslogd. By checking out the relevant guide, we could see that outlog file is by default associated with syslog service. But not all files under var log are associated with syslog service by default. So in our case, source type was not customized, and after we surpassed minimum number of 100 logs for too small prefix and restarted Splunk forwarding, we could see the default source type. And let's proceed to answer the next question. Let's add user analyst and see how many events will be reported back in Splunk. And let's look in Splunk. Let's remove everything from search and start from index equals all. And we see analyst among results. So let's search for analyst. And there are 6 events reported back. So the answer to the second question will be 6. And answer to the last question for this task is what's associated group with this user, and that would be this one. Let's terminate the previous Linux instance and let's start machine relevant for this task. Installing Splunk on a Windows platform is relatively simple with just running the installer. Connect with the Windows machine by clicking the Start Machine button on the right. It will take around 3 to 5 minutes to boot completely and will start in split screen view on the right side of the screen. In case the VM is not visible, use the blue Show Split View button at the top right of the page. On the Windows machine, we will first install Splunk, configure a forwarder to capture Windows event logs, and integrate Coffee web logs to collect all requests and responses into Splunk instance. Downloading Splunk Enterprise. The first step would be to log into the Splunk portal and download the Splunk Enterprise instance from the website, as shown below. The installer Splunk instance is already been downloaded and placed in the Downloads folder to speed up the process. Run the Splunk instance installer. By default, it will install Splunk in the folder C Program Files Splunk. This will check the system for dependencies and will take 5 to 8 minutes to install the Splunk instance. First, click the Check this box to accept the license agreement and click Next. Create administration account. The important step during installation is creating an administrator account as shown below. This account will have high privileges, create and manage other accounts, and control all administrative roles. It will look for the system requirement for compatibility and other checks. We will get the following message if all system requirements are met and installation is complete. Accessing Splunk instance. Splunk is installed on port 8000 by default. We can change the port during the installation process as well. Now open the browser in the lab and go to the URL http 127.0.0.1.8000. If you are connected to the VPN, you can also access the newly installed Splunk instance in your browser by going to http 10.10.50.160.8000. Use the credentials created during the installation process to get the Splunk dashboard. Great, we have successfully installed Splunk on a Windows OS. In the next task, we will follow similar steps we did during Linux Lab to install Splunk Forwarder. Now let's try to answer some of these questions without the hands-on part. What is the default port Splunk runs on? Click on the Add Data tab. How many methods are available for data ingestion? Okay, we'll check that afterwards. And click on the Monitor option. What is the first option shown in the monitoring list? We will check that also afterwards. So let's switch to our machine and start the installation process. Let's accept the license agreement. Proceed. Let's give it the username of Splunk admin. And proceed with installation. Let's launch our Splunk user interface and proceed to answer the last few questions for this task. Let's add data. The first question was, how many methods are available for data ingestion? And click on the monitor option. What is the first option shown in the monitoring list? That would be local event logs. Great, let's proceed to task 8, installing and configuring forwarder. First, we will configure the receiver on Splunk so the forwarder knows where to send the data. Configure receiving. Log into Splunk and go to Settings, Forward and Receiving tab as shown below. It will show multiple options to configure both forwarding and receiving. As we want to receive data from the Windows endpoint, we will click on Configure Receiving and then proceed by configuring a new receiving port. By default, the Splunk instance receives data from the forwarder on port 9997. It's up to us to use this port or change it. For now, we will configure our Splunk to start listening on port 9997 and save as shown below. Installing Splunk Forwarder. Installing Splunk Forwarder is very straightforward. First, we will download the latest forwarder from the official website here. As of writing this, Splunk Forwarder 904 is the newest version available on the site. For this lab, the forwarder is already downloaded and placed in the downloads folder as shown below. Installation process. Click on the installer and begin installing Splunk Forwarder as shown below. Don't forget to click the check this box to accept the license agreement. Select the on-premises option as we are installing it on an on-premises appliance. Create an account for Splunk Forwarder. This will be used when connecting the Splunk Forwarder to the Splunk indexer. Setting up deployment server. This configuration is important if we install Splunk Forwarder on multiple hosts. We can skip this step as this step is optional. Setting up listener, we must specify the server's IP address and port number to ensure that our Splunk instance gets the logs from this host. By default, Splunk listens on port 9997 for any incoming traffic. Installing the forwarder on a Windows endpoint will take 3 to 5 minutes. If we had provided the information about the deployment server during the installation phase, our host details would be available in the Settings Forwarder Management tab as shown below. Now that Splunk Forwarder is installed, we will now configure our forwarder to send logs to our Splunk instance in the upcoming tasks. The questions for this task are: what is the full path in the C program files where Splunk Forwarder is installed? We can see that above. Here mentioned. Next question: what is the default port on which Splunk configures the forwarder? So let's try with the assumed answer. And what is the default port? And let's proceed to do this part hands-on. There it is. Great. Let's proceed to the next task, ingesting Windows logs. We have installed the forwarder and set up the listener on Splunk. It's time to configure Splunk to receive event logs from this host and configure the forwarder to collect event logs from the host and send them to the Splunk indexer. Let's go through this step by step. Check Forwarder Management. The Forwarder Management tab views and configures the deployment of servers hosts. Go to Settings Forwarder Management tab to get the details of all deployment hosts. In an actual network, this tab will be filled with all the hosts and servers configured to send logs to Splunk indexer. It will appear here if we have properly configured the forwarder on the host. Now it's time to configure Splunk to receive the event logs. Select Forwarder. Click on Settings, Add Data. It shows all the options to add data from different sources. It provides us with 3 options for selecting how to ingest our data. We'll choose the Forward option to get the data from Splunk Forwarder. In the Select Forwarders section, click on the host Coffee Lab shown in the Available Hosts tab, and it will be moved to the Selected Hosts tab. Then click Next. Select Source. It's time to select the log source that we need to ingest. The list shows many log sources to choose from. Click on Local Event Logs to configure receiving event logs from the host. Different event logs will appear in the list to choose from. As we know, various event logs are generated by default on the Windows host. More about event logs can be learned in this Windows Event Logs room. Let's select a few of those and move to the next step. Creating index. Create an index that will store the incoming event logs. Once created, select the index from the list and move to the next step. Review. The Review tab summarizes the settings we just did to configure Splunk. Move to the next step. Click on the Start Searching tab. It will take us to the Search app. If everything goes smoothly, we will receive the event logs immediately. Great, we have successfully configured Splunk to receive event logs from the Windows host. Let's move on to the next task, where we will look at the steps to ingest web logs. Two questions here. The first one, while selecting local event logs to monitor, how many event logs are available to select from the list to monitor? Okay, we'll answer that by going through the hands-on part. And second question, search for the events with event code 4624. What is the value of the field message? That one also. Okay, let's proceed to the hands-on part. Now let's add server class name as shown on the screenshot. Coffee Lab. Local event logs. We have available 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. Let's pick 3. Local event logs. Let's pick application security and system, and here the answer should be 5. Let's check. And that's right. Okay, let's get back. Let's pick application security system. Then let's see what indexes we have available. We don't have the one as in the screenshot. Let's create new index. Let's name it win logs. And let's save that and pick that one. Okay, it's automatically chosen. And let's review. Looks good at the moment. Submit. And let's start searching. the moment we don't have any events found. We're searching through all available time in smart mode. Let's refresh the page. Let's try to remove source, searching with only index to see if that will help. Let's give it a minute. Okay, we have now some events reported back, and the question here was search for the event with this code 4624. What is the value of the field message? So here, what is the value of the field message? Let's expand this view. Let's show 12 lines, for example, and then we see what would the message be. So we need event code, certain event code. So let's click on this one and add to search, and we'll adjust our search with our specific event code. And that would be 4624. And let's search for that. And let's show message would be an account was successfully logged on. Let's copy paste that. Great, let's proceed to task 10, ingesting Coffee web logs. The Windows host we connected to Splunk instance also hosts a local copy of their website, which can be accessed via HTTP Coffee THM from the VM and is in the development phase. You are asked to configure Splunk to receive the web logs from this website to trace the orders and improve coffee sales. This site will allow users to order coffee online. In the backend, it will keep track of all the requests and responses and the orders placed. Now let's follow the next steps to ingest weblogs into Splunk. Add data. Go to Settings, Add Data, and select Forward from the list as shown below. Select the forwarder option. Select forwarder. Here we will select the web host where the website is being hosted. Weblogs are placed in the directory C inetpub logs log files w3 svc star. The directory may contain one or more log files, which will be continuously updated with the logs. We will be configuring Splunk to monitor and receive logs from this directory. The screenshot shows w3 svc2 and the instruction mentions star. So we'll see what will be our case. Setting up source type. Next, we will select the source type for our logs. As our web is hosted on an IIS server, we'll choose this option and create an appropriate index for these logs. We can look at the summary to see if all settings are fine. Now everything is done. It's time to see if we get the weblogs in our newly created index. Let's visit the website coffee.thm and generate some logs. The logs should start propagating in about 4 to 5 minutes in the search tab as shown below. Excellent. It looks like we were successful in getting the weblogs ingested into Splunk. However, the logs may need proper parsing and normalizing, which is something to be discussed in upcoming rooms. So for this task, the question is, in the lab, visit http://secretflag.html. It will display the history logs in the orders made so far. Find the flag in one of the logs. And let's proceed to the hands-on part. So let's visit the website first. While the website is loading, let's proceed to settings, add data, forward our instance, and let's verify weblogs as server class name. Then add files and directories coming from this specific. We'll verify the last part directory and select IIS as source type and save that. Wait a couple of minutes and we expect to see logs from the website propagating to our Splunk instance. Okay, here is our website. Weblogs will be server class name. And let's verify our directory. See init.pub. Then we have logs, log files, and in our case it's w3 svc1. Let's see what we have there. Let's pick IS index. Select the source type. Source type will be IS, web, IS. Let's see for the index win logs. Let's review. Looks good at the moment, so let's submit. And let's start searching. So let's wait 4 to 5 minutes. And let's see the question. The question is at the moment not related to Splunk instance. So to answer the question, we should visit directly Coffee THM secret flag HTML and find the flag in one of the logs. Let's see if we can find here something that resembles our flag with squiggly brackets. And there it is. Great, and let's see if we now have some events reported in our Splunk instance. Not yet. Let's proceed to the last task, and after I finish reading it, I'll refresh the view once again. Conclusion, that is it. Understanding the process of installation and configuration of any SIEM solution and then ingesting logs from various sources is a very important concept for a SOC analyst. In this room, we learned how to install Splunk both on Linux and Windows host, install Splunk Forwarder on Linux and Windows host, configure Splunk to receive OS-based and web logs. More advanced topics will be covered in future rooms. And no questions here, so let's refresh the Splunk instance view once again. Let's give it a couple of more minutes. Let's try without this source. Let's see what we have if we search only for index win logs and source type IIS. Great. Now we see secret flag. Yeah. Logs from the Coffee website reported back, and let's see what sources are available here. Okay, these are the two values available as source. Great, so that would be all for this task. So that would be all for this room named Splunk, setting up a SOC lab. So you can stop here or make a brief pause and continue with me to this related Splunk room with the focus on dashboards and reports. So let's proceed now. Splunk is one of the most widely used security information and event management SIEM solutions in the enterprise environment. It helps aggregate data from different data sources in the enterprise environment to help enhance security monitoring. However, sometimes this data becomes too overwhelming for analysts. In this room, we will learn how an analyst can better organize the data in Splunk. Broadly, we will have the following learning objectives. First, why do we need to organize data in Splunk? Second, creating dashboards for the visualization of high-level information. Third, scheduling reports for recurring searches of data. And fourth, translating Security Operations Center SOC use cases to alerts. Prerequisites: before starting this room, it is recommended that you complete the following rooms: Splunk Basics, Splunk Exploring SPL, and Splunk Setting up a SOC Lab. No questions in this task. Let's proceed to task 2, organizing data in Splunk. Splunk does a great job of aggregating the security-related data of an organization's assets in a single place. However, this data is huge, difficult to grasp and make sense of. We will learn how to make sense of the data in this room. When we open Splunk, this is the screen we might be greeted with after signing in. To move forward, go to the first tab on the left menu, Search and Reporting. Clicking that, we see the following interface. Now we can see that we have an interface for the search app. For starters, we can start a search with the search term index equals star to see what data we have here. We have set the time window to all time to see the data historically present here as well. Looking at the above screenshot, we can feel overwhelmed. There are more than 35,000 events present in this data. If we are to sift through this data manually, it will make our lives difficult instead of making them easier. Therefore, looking at raw data is often not a good idea when our goal is to get an overview of an organization's security posture. It also doesn't give us much information about the threats and attacks launched against the organization. Now, this is just a sample of data in Splunk that we have added for this room. In production, we should avoid running searches for all time, as they can add undue load on the Splunk search head and make other searches difficult and slow. The above-mentioned problems are bound to appear when we deal with a lot of data. Splunk is a data analysis platform that provides solutions for these problems. In the coming tasks, we will see how to aggregate and visualize this data to find answers to our problems. And question in this task is, which search term will show us results from all indices in Splunk? So we saw that in the instruction above. Great, let's proceed to task 3, creating reports for recurring searches. Until now, we have been using Splunk for broad searches mainly. However, we often need to run specific searches from time to time. For example, a certain organization might want to run a search every 8 hours when a new shift of SOC analysts arrives or is leaving. For this purpose, creating a report that will run at a specific time is efficient. Reports will then run the searches and save the results for viewing when the analysts for the incoming shift arrive. Reports can also help reduce the load on the Splunk search head. For example, if multiple searches need to be run at the start of every shift, running them simultaneously can increase the search head's load and processing times. If searches are scheduled with 5 or 10-minute intervals, they will accomplish two tasks. First, the searches will run automatically without any user interaction, and second, the searches will not run simultaneously, reducing the possibility of errors or inefficiency. Before moving forward, please start the attached VM by clicking the Start Machine button on the top right corner. Once the IP address is visible, you can use the URL, as you'll see it in a moment or two, to access the Splunk instance. It may take 3 to 5 minutes for the Splunk instance to start. A VPN connection is not needed to access the Splunk instances. Continuing from the previous task, move to the Reports tab to look at already saved reports in Splunk. We will see the following interface. Here we see a list of reports already saved in Splunk. If we want to view the saved results of a report, we can click on the report's name. However, if we want to run a new search using the same query as the one in a report, we can use the Open in Search option. The Edit option allows us to edit the reports. The Next Scheduled Time tab shows when the report will run again. We can also see the report's owner and its associated permissions. Please note that we have selected all reports to be shown in the view above. There are options for viewing only the logged-in users' reports, as well as for viewing the reports added by the app. To create a new report, we can run a search and use the Save As option to save the search as a report. Once we click the option to save as report, we see the following window. Filling in the required data and clicking the Save option here will save the search as a report. Let's practice the same in the attached Splunk instance. We ran a search in the previous task. To create a report on a search, we will first have to understand the data. On the left tab, we will see some fields Splunk has identified that might interest us. Let's click on Hosts to see the number of hosts sending logs to our Splunk instance. So we have 3 hosts: network server, web server, and VPN server. They are all sending different numbers of events. If we are to determine the number of times each VPN user logged in during our given time window, which is all time for this room, we will run the following query: host equals VPN server, pipe, stats count by username. This is what we get when we run this query in our instance. In a SOC environment, we might want to track users who logged in during a certain time window. This requirement might be repetitive. SOC analysts can create a report for this requirement that will run every few hours for ease of use. Let's practice that based on what we learned in this task. First, we click Save As and select Reports. We fill in the required information. Here, we can see the content for this report will be a statistics table. Because we used stats count in our query, the time range picker has been set to yes. This means running the report will give us a time range picker option. When we click Save, we get the following prompt, telling us the report has been created. We can click the View option to view our report. This is how it will look. On our Reports tab, we can see our report now. We see the owner of the report is admin, the logged in user. The sharing is set to private. This means that this report can only be accessed by admin. We can use the edit option to change the permissions and set it to be used by other users. Two questions here. The first one, create a report from the network server logs host that lists the ports used in network connections and their count. What is the highest number of times any port is used in network connections? And second question, while creating reports, which option do we need to enable to get to choose the time range of the report? So for the second question, we saw that in a screenshot above. That should be time range picker. And let's hit the hint for the first question. Stats count by port in descending order. Okay, let's proceed to do this task hands-on. And let's proceed to access our Splunk instance. We'll need a text box in this room. Let's give it a minute to initialize. So let's access our Splunk instance now from our attack box. From previous task, we had let's run this search. Let's see, let's search through all time available in verbose mode. Okay. Let's proceed to task 3. Let's check out available reports. Let's view our instance in full screen and exit split view. For example, we could save this search as a report, but for now let's proceed to reports tab. These are the reports available. And let's check out, let's run this search as seen in the instruction. Let's verify the host's VPN server is available, and let's get the stats count by username. So let's see what available hosts, and we're interested into this VPN server if available. There it is. And let's host equals VPN server. Okay, let's just add the last part. And on the right we see the count, we can sort that, and we see Sarah repeating the highest number of times, and the least Emma. And we can save that as a report. Let's give it a name, VPN users. Statistics, table time range picker, yes. And let's save it. Let's click X here, and then let's manually switch to reports tab and pick it from there. Great. So now to answer the question, let's create a report from network server logs that list the ports used. And what's the highest number of times any port is used. We'll essentially adjust the query we just ran for our specific host and stats count by port. And we see here in the first column ports and the second column count. So let's sort the second column. So we see the highest number here is 5 for several ports. So let's try with that. Great, let's proceed to task 4, creating dashboards for summarizing results. Splunk provides us with the ability to create dashboards and visualizations. These dashboards and visualizations provide the user with quick info about the data present in Splunk. Dashboards are often created to help give a brief overview of the most important bits of the data. They are often helpful in presenting data and statistics to the management, such as the number of incidents in a given time frame, or for SOC analysts to figure out where to focus, such as identifying spikes and drops in data sources, which might indicate a surge in, say, failed login attempts. The primary purpose of dashboards is to provide a quick visual overview of the available information. To move forward, let's create a dashboard in the attached VM. To start, move to the Dashboards tab. We will see the Below screen. In this screen, we see an option to create dashboards labeled as 1 in the screenshot. Labeled as 2 is a list of available dashboards. Please note that we have selected all dashboards here instead of yours or these apps, which can show a different list of dashboards. Labeled as 3 is information about these dashboards, such as owner, permissions, etc. Here we also find the option to edit the dashboard's different properties or set it as the home dashboard. We can also view a dashboard by clicking on the name of the dashboard. However, we don't have any dashboards yet. We can start by creating a dashboard. For that, let's click the Create Dashboard option to see the following window. After filling in the relevant details, such as the name and permissions, we can choose one of the two options for dashboard creation through Classic Dashboards or Dashboard Studio. We can see that we have set permissions to shared in-app. This will ensure that the dashboard is also visible to other users in Splunk. We will use the classic dashboard approach to create a dashboard for this room. Let's do that and click Create. The window tells us to click Add Panel to start. When we click the Add Panel option, we get the following menu on the right side. We want to add the results from our report to the dashboard. We can select the New from Report option to do that. The Add to Dashboard option will add these results to our dashboard. However, we were already seeing the results as a report. What benefit will a dashboard provide us? The answer to that lies in visualizations. We can select a visualization from the menu as shown below. Let's select the column chart visualization and check out the results. Doesn't it look nice? We can see on a cursory glance that Emma logged in the least amount of times and Sarah logged in the most. This is the kind of information that a dashboard is helpful for. Another way dashboards can help is by adding multiple reports to a single dashboard. The process for that will be similar, as we still see the Add Panel option above. However, we will keep this task to a single report. We can flip the switch to the dark theme and click Save to save the dashboard if we like it. This is how it will look when finished. Now we can go to the Dashboards menu to see our newly created dashboard. Two questions in this task. The first one, create a dashboard from the web server logs that show the status codes in a line chart. which status code was observed for the least number of times? And the second one, what is the name of the traditional Splunk dashboard builder? That was mentioned in the instruction. That's classic. Here. Let's answer that question. Now let's switch to our room Windows instance. Let's proceed to create a dashboard from our recently created report with VPN users. Dashboards. We see here we can filter across all dashboards, yours, or these apps. And let's create a new dashboard. Let's call it VPN users. Let's add panel from report, VPN users. Let's add to dashboard. Let's give it a name, logged in users. And let's switch to dark theme. Okay, first let's save and refresh. Great, and let's proceed to create a dashboard relevant to task's first question. Let's start from search. And let's go through search history. Let's start from index equals star. And search through all time available. This dashboard is related to our web server host. Let's click on it. And from there we are interested into status code statistics. So let's copy this string here and we have a suggestion here. Let's click on it. Stats count by status code. Yeah, that's the one. We'll accept this suggestion and let's run the search. Great. And when we sort this count, we can conclude the least amount of time is this code or status code here shown. And that's the answer to our question. And let's proceed to create a dashboard from this search. So we can immediately create a new dashboard. Let's do just that. Let's view dashboard. Let's see our dashboards list. And from here we can also edit our dashboard visualization. Let's choose line chart. And save that. That's all for this task. Let's proceed to task number 5. In the previous tasks, we practiced creating reports and dashboards. We understood that when we need to run a search repetitively, we can use reports. And if we want to club a few reports together or make visualizations, we can use dashboards. However, reports and dashboards will only be viewed by users at set time intervals. Sometimes we want to be alerted if a certain event happens, such as if the amount of failed logins on a single account reaches a threshold. It indicates a brute force attempt, and we would like to know as soon as it happens. In this task, we will learn how to set up alerts. Unfortunately, we cannot practice setting up alerts on the attached instance because of licensing issues. However, we will explain how to set up an alert in this task. First, we will run a search for our required search term. In the Save As dropdown, we will see an option for saving as an alert. In the previous task, we identified that the user Sarah logged in the most during our time range. Therefore, let's narrow down our search to all the login events of the user Sarah. When we click Alert in the Save As menu, we are asked to configure the alert's parameters. We see the usual settings such as title, description, and permissions. In addition to that, we have some more options specific to alerts. The alert type we are setting up is scheduled. This means that Splunk will run the search as per the schedule, and if the trigger condition is satisfied, an alert will be raised. Depending on the license and configuration for your Splunk instance, you might get an option for scheduling real-time alerts. Next, we have trigger conditions. Trigger conditions define the conditions when the alert will be raised. Here, let's say we raise the alert when the login count of our user is more than 5. In that case, we will use the number of results option and set the is greater than option to 5. We can trigger 5 alerts for the 5 login times, or we can just trigger a single alert for exceeding this count. The throttle option lets us limit the alerts by not raising an alert in the specified time period if an alert is already triggered. This can help reduce alert fatigue, which can overwhelm analysts when there are too many alerts. The final option here is for trigger actions. This option allows us to define what automated steps Splunk must take when the alert is triggered. For example, we might want Splunk to send an email to the SOC email account in case of an alert. Below, we can see the configured alert. We have configured it to run every hour if Sarah logs in more than 5 times. The email will only be sent once every 60 minutes. If the alert is triggered, Splunk will send an email to soc@tryhackme.com. The email will be sent with the highest priority, and it will include the subject and message mentioned above. And we have 3 questions in this task. The first one, what feature can we use to make Splunk take some actions on our behalf? Second question, which alert type will trigger the instant an event occurs? And lastly, which option, when enabled, will only send a single alert in the specified time, even if the trigger conditions reoccur? To answer the first question, we'll scroll up to the relevant screenshot. Trigger actions. Let's try with that. Second one, which alert type will trigger the instant an event occurs? Real time. So our here was scheduled. This in here. And the last one, only send a single alert in the specified time, even if the trigger conditions reoccur. So that would be throttling. Throttle. Let's try with throttle. Great, and let's proceed to the last task for today, conclusion. This was a brief introduction on leveraging Splunk for better data management by creating reports, dashboards, and alerts. In this task, we learned: why do we need to have data organization in Splunk? How can we create reports to schedule searches? Creating dashboards for visualizing data, and setting up alerts to get results of certain searches in our inbox. But that's not all Splunk has to offer to a security analyst. For learning more about using Splunk to enhance the security posture of your organization, check out the rest of the rooms in this module. Let us know what you found interesting in this room on our Discord channel or Twitter account. Yay, I can create reports and dashboards in Splunk now. Let's click complete. And that would be all for this video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this one. Until next video. Bye for now.